I'm so high, so high.
This is how I spent one of my mornings during a month-long stay in southern Turkiye. I was one of around 2,000 people in this particular flight window who decided to take a hot air balloon ride in Cappadocia. It turned out to be one of my favorite travel experiences of all time. It almost didn't happen. I booked an overnight tour out of Antalya to go to Cappadocia, see some sights, spend the night, and come back the next day. It was only $55, which included transportation, a meal, and the hotel for the night. The hot air balloon rides are the biggest attraction, but I'd been up in a balloon a couple of times in the past. That, combined with the expectation that rides would cost an extra $250 to $300, had me thinking that I would not go aloft. It was only when the tour guide stated that a sunrise float would only cost $150 that I contemplated changing my mind. Following a few minutes of thought, I reckoned that I might as well do it. After all, I was already in this beautiful setting, so it made sense to see why this is considered one of the top hot air balloon experiences on the planet. You can see the clips. It was one of the best decisions I've made.
You see, my home is where my heart is so.
Before I arrived in Turkey, or Turkiye as I continue to stress, I thought that Cappadocia was a particular city. I soon found out that it is instead a region with a landscape formed by volcanic activity and comprised of numerous population centers. No matter what it is called, this place is astonishing. The number one activity for which Cappadocia is known is hot air ballooning. At one point, I considered building drama through this video, culminating with whether my planned early morning flight happened or not. Sorry, but I'm too excited for you to see this to build suspense. What was described a day earlier as a 50-50 shot at getting up worked in my favor. It was an amazing ride. When booking a balloon ride in Cappadocia, there is no certainty that it will actually happen. If there's fog or rain or the winds exceed a certain level, flights for that window will be canceled. After a 4 o'clock wake up and a ride to the launch site, however, it was clear that there would be flying on this day. There was an intoxicating level of excitement as all around crews worked to quickly produce heated air to fill the balloons. Darkness had begun to give way to the light, but numerous burner systems nearby brightened things even more. People piled into the gondola or basket of our balloon, and the filling of the envelope continued as we anticipated liftoff. There was a bit more of a breeze than I thought would have been acceptable, but what do I know? The ground crew did seem to struggle to hold the balloon in place until it was time for release. And then flight was achieved. We lifted gracefully and took to the sky. Our balloon joined others that had already become airborne and preceded some that remained on the earth. What followed was an hour of wonder and awe. An hour. I never imagined that the ride would last so long. A big highlight came 20 minutes or so into the flight. The sun rising above the horizon created a phenomenal scene. When it was just the sun and the landscape, that was special. It was taken to a whole new level though, when other balloons were visible in the foreground. I was told there are flights which begin later in the day, at least at certain times of the year. These which happen in time to catch the dawn though, have got to be the most breathtaking. There was not simply aimless floating. The pilot has limited control over lateral movement in the balloon. Altitude, though, is where he or she can make a difference. The burner is fired to make the balloon rise. A vent at the top of the envelope can allow hot air to escape, which causes the craft to drift lower. Our pilot took us up to around 800 meters. He also expertly lowered us to nearly ground level, where we could closely inspect the ferry chimneys in Love Valley. I was impressed by not only our guide, but everyone else, as the choreography was carried out in sometimes crowded skies. There were several reasons that this was far superior to my other hot air balloon experiences. Sunrise, the landscape, the length of time aloft. The biggest factor in that regard, though, was being in the air with so many others. There had to be 100 balloons up at the same time as us. That's what manufactures the true spectacle here and makes this arguably the premier happening of its kind in the world. This is quite the industry, too. There were about 20 people in the basket with me. That's probably an average number. And then there are 100 to 150 flights each day. If the average price paid is $200, well, you can do the math. The gondolas do have a lot of people in them, but still, everybody gets plenty of good views. There is enough time, too, to capture all of the images and take as many selfies as you will ever post on social media. This experience is overwhelmingly positive.
It's dream come true, one tick out of my bucket list.
And can you imagine doing this as you celebrate the day you were born? That was the case for one of my new friends from the Philippines.
So it was a happy birthday indeed. It's a happy birthday for me.
It's probably impossible to be sad when soaring over Cappadocia in a hot air balloon.
All pictures you see in internet, it can be real if you will be lucky with weather and your balloon will fly.
I embarked on this tour thinking that I would not go for this ride. What a change in attitude once I left the ground. To say that this has exceeded my expectations would be an extreme understatement. If flying over Cappadocia in a hot air balloon is not on your bucket list, add it immediately, and maybe put it right at the top. I finished the morning knowing that it would have been a monumental loss not to take advantage of the opportunity. In the end, there was a celebratory mood as everyone seemed to realize how fortunate they were to be able to be in this place and participate in this adventure. A finishing toast, although non-alcoholic, seemed to be very appropriate. This memory is truly one of those that will last a lifetime. No doubt the hot air balloon ride was the highlight of this tour. There were other elements as well, however, which were also quite appealing. On the afternoon of the first day, I chose to go on a jeep safari through the otherworldly landscape of Cappadocia. Joining me were 3 of the girls from the Philippines, Sheila, Lucy, and Maria. Our driver was intent on getting the adrenaline pumping. We screamed up and down hills while finding ourselves in uncomfortable angles as the Jeep moved ever forward. It was a fun ride. We made several stops, and the connections between each of those places were filled with thrilling moments on the road. You'll remember Love Valley from when we dipped down amongst the ferry chimneys while on the balloon ride. During the Jeep safari, I got the grounded perspective. Actually, I still saw the valley from above, but it was from the bluff that loomed over top. This site is definitely unique. This is one of those places with rock formations that you look at them and you go, how in the world did natural forces sculpt these? It looks like another planet altogether. Millions of years of volcanic eruptions and erosion has carved the stones of Love Valley. Some of those ferry chimneys rise as much as 40 meters from the base. We stopped at several other valleys in the same general area. Similar environmental factors came together to create each one, but the results are different from place to place. This is White Valley. Not far away is another spot which also contains rock formations that are quite distinctive. And this place earns today's award for most on-the-nose name. This is Mushroom Valley. It was fun to see the subtle differences in little valleys that are very close to each other. One aspect that is extremely appealing to the younger crowd is that these locations apparently provide excellent backdrops for social media posts. And little did I know that our driver actually is a videographer and photographer as well. Does a great job. Our driver was expert in taking our little group to all the most picturesque areas. He also knew how to pose as subjects. Often, the Jeep was also used as a prop. Not a bad way to promote this venture. The guy literally spent more time capturing photos and videos than he did behind the wheel. Some of the more interesting elements were found in Rose Valley. We stepped into this cave at one point. It was small in size, but large in what it offered visually. My first impression was that it looked similar to some of the slot canyons in the American Southwest. The light seeping in from the outside created a mystical beauty. I got the sense that if you combed this area, you would probably find numerous spots such as this. Even more incredible here was this cave church. We had to scramble up from the trail below to get inside. What we found was a total surprise. There were frescoes and other features that left no doubt that this was a Christian church. From what I understand, during the Byzantine era, people of that faith sought refuge here. That was roughly from the 4th to the 15th centuries. It was remarkable to discover the cave and an example of the type of churches that were fashioned out of the stones. Rose Valley was the final stop on our Jeep Safari portion of the tour. It was a great way to spend the afternoon. There was an extra cost for this. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 or $50. Those of us who did the Jeep Safari caught up with all the others on the tour at a fun site. This is Imagination Valley and is so named because the rock formations here conjure up thoughts of items or creatures that they resemble. Think of it like gazing up at puffy clouds in the sky.
The cool thing is, a rock doesn't have to be a singular item. You look at it from one angle and it looks like one thing. Then you walk about 100 meters, it looks like something totally different.
I enjoyed wandering through the rocks to see if anything looked familiar.
That is a prairie dog if I've ever seen one.
There was no shortage of formations that spurred my imagination.
It looks like a bulldog face. I don't know what the appendage behind it is.
It was a cool little spot, but we only stayed here for 15 or 20 minutes. On our tour, we also spent time underground. This is the rock city Cappadocia, sometimes also called Nevşehir. We spent about a half hour exploring this site. It was a dive into how life used to be here. This site was only officially discovered about 10 years ago, but locals had known about it all along, even using some of the subterranean rooms for storage. Around 700 rooms have been found in this location, and the thought is that hundreds, if not thousands of people lived in the complex. Underground cities such as this are believed to have originated in the 7th to 8th centuries before the Common Era. Occupants continued to expand and refine the spaces through the ages.
The rock town here was massive, but it wasn't the only one. In this area, there were literally hundreds of other underground rock cities.
About 200 underground cities are known to exist in the region, and there is speculation that many more are yet to be found. Some are much more extensive than this one, with multiple layers going much deeper into the earth. I had one of my most unique dining experiences in Turkiye during this trip. The food consisted of meat, vegetables, and rice. There was nothing out of the ordinary there.
I think this is really good, but despite how tasty it is, the show that brought this to the plate and got it cooked, even more spectacular.
The dish is called Testi Kebab, known alternatively as pottery, clay, or terracotta kebab. The ingredients are cooked slowly inside the pottery. At least the final stages of the process are carried out with a container immersed in flames. This is probably just performance, but I am not complaining. For a tour that cost so little, the hotel in which we stayed was tremendous. The name is Dedeli Konagi. That translates to grandfather's mansion. There were several levels and lots of terraces. Staying here was a lot like sleeping in a cave.
The hot air balloon rides will likely always be the biggest attraction in Cappadocia. As you can see though, this is a region that is much more than a location that is good for one reason alone. Even if luck is not with you in your quest to rise above the landscape, this is a place that should definitely be experienced. Turkiye continues to prove itself as a fascinating country, full of wonder and possibility. My discovery will go on for the next couple of weeks as I continue to explore. Make sure you return frequently to see what I'm up to. here on Old, Alone, and Far From Home.